behind me is my truck camper. I added these steps a while back and hooked the truck up to the trailer tonight just to see how things look. I've got lots of room. I attached the steps to the original step brackets. And what I'm going to do next is install the bracket that they make so that you can attach these steps to the bumper. It's called the Stow N Go bracket. Here's the bracket still in the box. It comes with a bag of a bunch of hardware and an instruction manual. And here we have the bracket. So the way this works is you bolt these 6 bolts to the stock bumper on a truck camper. If your truck camper doesn't have a bumper, then in some cases you can attach this to the back of the truck camper. It just depends on if your model truck camper has enough structural support in the area below the door. The first step is my A7820 steps. What you need to do if you did not purchase the steps with the bracket is install this bent arm. This step 3 in the instructions, which describe converting your glow steps to a setup that will work with the Stow N Go bracket. We pull this arm off and we flip it over to the inside. And these nuts and bolts don't need to be extremely tight. You actually want them just barely snug because those are pivot points. And then we'll repeat the process for the other side. On step 4, we remove this bolt here and install a new bolt and 3 spacers. There's 4 bolts that look similar that come in the kit. 2 of them have flat washers, these 2, and they have a different arrangement. Looks like a different diameter spacer. We use the ones without the flat washer, and these spacers are all the same diameter. What we want to do is use a clamp to put some tension on these arms to keep everything tight, so hopefully we don't lose our spacers out of there. And then we repeat the process for the other side. Our other set of bolts with the flat washer, those go in the middle here. And these bolts are described in step 5, which is on page 11. And then we'll repeat the process for the other side as well. Okay, there is one thing that I overlooked on the instructions, and it says to reuse this stainless steel thin profile lock nut on here and here. These nuts that came with these bolts were simply included in order to hold all of the spacers in place. If you look at them, they are a normal profile nut, where these original stainless are a low profile. They're about a third less height. So I need to change out all 4 of those lock nuts. Once you have the modifications complete, you'll have your angled bracket here and undersized spacer here and your spacers here that are all the same size. And what this spacer does is provides a place to attach the rubber clamp that secures the steps to the bracket, and this slides into a little slot in the bracket. I've got my Stow N Go bracket test fit to the camper with the steps mounted up. I'm just holding the bracket in place with a big set of clamps right now, kind of trying to get a feel for where an ideal location for it would be. I always tow a trailer, so the object was to get it as far over to the right as possible. As you can see right there, it could go a little bit more, but I don't know that there's any point in moving it any further because we've got our propane quick disconnect fitting right there. So it's probably fine right where it's at as far as location. The lowest point on the step is the foot. This is the landing near feet. Let's see what the measurement is from the ground. We are at 17 inches. Here's my original step. And take the same measurement. We are at about 16 3/4 inches to the bottom of the rubber pad. And the way this bracket is positioned right now, it could go up about another 1/4 inch. Had this truck camper since late 2009. My first trip was early 2010. And all of those trips I've always had a trailer and never have had any issues with the trailer interfering with the step. You can see that I can raise this up about another 1/4 inch. Where I had the bracket position just coincidentally happened to be centered on my original step bracket. So I think I'll just go ahead and stick with that as my mounting location. I've marked where my mounting holes are, and I'll stick some tape here. And the purpose of the tape is so I can make some marks with pen or pencil once I get the step bracket put back in place. And what I'll do is open up this bumper step and pull that tray out. I'll look at my assortment of hardware, and that will dictate how high I go, because if there's some large flat washers, that's going to prevent me from putting this up so high that the flat washer would interfere with that curve right there. As far as the hardware, we've got this large star washer and this bolt, and the bolts and star washers go from the inside of the bumper out, and then your nuts go on the outside. So the only thing to keep in mind is not to have this bracket so high that it prevents your star washer from being installed. Sit this washer here, measured down, and I've already measured the center of the washer hole at 5/8 of an inch. So I could mount the bracket so the holes are 5/8 inch from the top of the bumper. I've got my holes marked out, or my lines where my holes will be. This is 5/8 from the top of the outside of the bumper, and this vertical line is centered on that bracket. The space between here is 1.5 inches, so I centered it at 3/4 of an inch. My other two marks, I just have the horizontal orientation line. I've got the bracket mounted with my clamps. Let's go ahead and tighten the clamps. Everything's lined up like I wanted it. And I will grab my punch. I've pulled the step bracket off and I'm using a step drill bit to drill my 7/16 hole because I don't have a 7/16 inch drill bit. I would recommend buying a 7/16 inch drill bit if you don't have one. The material on the bumper is pretty thick, and it's actually thicker than what these steps are, so you can maybe see that it's starting to countersink just a little bit. My bumper has enough space in it where I can get my arm in here and put the bolts through. The instructions describe using a little fish wire, and the kit actually includes that fish wire. I think I can get it. Might have been better to not put all the bolts in all at the same time, because then we're going to end up with issues getting this lined up without pushing some of the bolts back through the holes. Unless I'm lucky. Yeah, I got lucky there. Next we'll take a flat washer and a stainless steel split washer and a nut. And install those on each of the 6 bolts. And once we've got all that in place, then we can use some tools and tighten those up. It's a 9/16 wrench and socket. After you've got your hardware and everything tightened up, then you'll want to vacuum out or blow out any metal shavings that are inside of the bumper. So I've got the bracket all mounted up. Grab my hardware here. There's a couple of little quick release pins and whatnot. And we'll just slide the step up here in the bracket. And probably what I will do is pick up some little nylon spacers to act as anti-friction washers between the bracket and this arm on the step. And then we'll take this little clip, pop it down into place. I'll probably look into getting some sort of a lock to secure these, because these would be really easy for somebody to walk off with in my campsite. And the way the steps stow, you can see the large nylon spacer slides into that slot. Just have to adjust the closure of the step a little bit, and then we pull back on this rubber strap. We do that on both sides. And that rubber strap fits over the smaller diameter portion of the spacer, which is the middle bolt on our steps. That's the one that has the flat washer on it. And then here's the process to deploy the steps. We undo our 2 rubber snubbers, just rock the step back towards you and pull down on it. And then if you've got the landing gear feet, we'll want to adjust those so the steps are level. Right now they are not level. Overall, I think this is going to work out a lot better than having these steps by themselves mounted to the original step brackets. So to stow the steps, just grab the bottom, fold it up like this, until it is folded up enough where it's going to slide into that slot, and there we go. And then this spacer here rides up against this rubber bumper.